We're recording the agenda for Marshall Council and Committee meeting Wednesday, the 9th of October, 2024 at 5:32 p.m. I'll call for a mover for approval of the agenda. Deputy Mayor Mooney, a seconder. Councilor Kirkbride, questions? All in favor? Contrary? Motion carries. Move down to presentations, and we've got the New Brunswick Medical Education Foundation. And Alyssa Long's here, the Executive Director, and David Ryan, the Fundraiser Manager. So, Alyssa, are you doing the?
Yes.
The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening, I'm Mayor Powell, Deputy Mayor, Councilors. Thank you so much for having us today. My name is Alyssa Long. I'm the Executive Director with the New Brunswick Medical Education Foundation. And with me is my colleague, David Ryan, who is our Fundraising Manager. Tonight, we're here to share a rare thing, which is a good news story in the healthcare sector. The entire province, of course, is facing a crisis in terms of human resources. So physicians, nurse practitioners, nurses. And what I'm here to talk about tonight, once we have the slides going, is we have a proven solution at the foundation to physician recruitment, which now has over a decade of demonstrable results. And that's what we're here to talk about. What we're going to dive into tonight is an evidence-based story. And I'll start by sharing our origin story. So back in 2010, a physician in St. John, New Brunswick, was approaching retirement after about 40 years in practice. He was becoming increasingly concerned about his patient panel, the orphan patients he would be leaving behind, because he did not see a funnel of young talent coming into New Brunswick. So at the time, Dalhousie Medicine New Brunswick was about to open, and he approached the university to say, what if rather than dedicating our resources to looking at established physicians in other provinces and trying to uproot them and bring them here, what if we engaged with medical students early on in their studies, and in exchange for tuition relief, get a pledge from them to practice in New Brunswick once qualified. It's a less expensive option than a lot of the recruitment incentives that we see for established physicians, and it gets them planning for a career here early on. So what grew from that 15 years later is a unique private foundation. We operate privately, managed by a volunteer board of directors, with a unique model with proven success. And I'll share a little bit more on that, but first I want to talk about the need across New Brunswick. And I actually have updated figures now. The New Brunswick Medical Society estimates that 180,000 New Brunswickers are without a primary care provider in the province, or over 20% of our population. But what's more concerning is that the average physician in the province is over 49 years old, which means within the next 10 to 15 years, we are going to see a mass exodus from the labor market. So how do we plan for that? How do we prepare for that when regions like Ormonto are continuing to see growth? So we have to address that. We have to look ahead and be proactive, but we also have to address the current need, which projects over 300 physician vacancies in both Vitalite and Horizon Health today. And what we've seen is that past efforts to address the crisis have been siloed and costly. So how do we fix that? Collaboration is really the answer. But first, we want to touch on what the need is in Fredericton specifically. And as of 2023, the primary care survey, which came out in April of this year, we know that the primary care attachment figures continue to decline in this region to the point where this health zone is the worst affected in the entire province. That's why for our foundation, it's actually our #1 focus. We're spending more time cultivating relationships and scholarships and a presence in this region because we want to draw physicians here. But just as access to care is a problem, so is timely access for those who have a provider. Just 28% of people who have a doctor or nurse practitioner can get in to see their provider within 5 days if they have an urgent issue. That's a problem. And of course, we see historically marginalized groups across the province are less likely overall to have a primary care provider. So again, our model is simple yet very effective. We raise funds, thanks to David and his work, to fund student scholarships. This allows us to provide those return to service scholarships to medical students and allied healthcare professional students who are enrolled in programs where they will eventually become primary care providers. This allows us to create a pipeline of future doctors committed to New Brunswick. And here are the results to date. We have supported over 300 students since inception with over 720 return to service scholarships. That means 720 pledged years of service. for New Brunswick from future physicians. We awarded over 130 scholarships this year, 149 scholarships, or $1.1 million in tuition support. We currently have actually 57 now physicians practicing across New Brunswick, 226 in our pipeline who have pledged to practice here once qualified. So looking at the students who we support, we see that applications are up actually 75% since 2021. What that's showing us is that New Brunswick is becoming an increasingly desirable place to live. Also, awareness of this program is growing, so we want to seize that momentum. There's interest here, and David and I together are working to close the gap so we can grow the foundation to a point where it can award all eligible medical students a scholarship. What this would allow us to do is optimize the potential of our medical students who are trained to become physicians, get them committed to the province. And of course, this commitment is binding. If they choose not to practice here, they pay the funds back to the foundation so we can support other students and get them to commit. So the funds are protected, and that's something we're very proud of. Of the students we support, they currently represent 47 different New Brunswick communities. So we support students from all health zones. Our alumni are practicing today in all health zones across the province in both official languages. 38% are enrolled in Francophone programs, and 44% are from historically marginalized groups. That includes newcomers, physicians with disabilities, members of the 2S LGBTQ+ community, etc. Looking at the regional impact then in Fredericton, we currently have 9 program alumni currently practicing in the greater Fredericton region. This year, we received applicants from 20 Frederictonians in eligible programs. We were able to award 60% of the applications received from this region last year. This year, we were up to 65%. So we are working to close the gap. We're making a difference, but this zone is underrepresented in terms of the scholarships we do offer today. So again, our goal is to create more scholarships tied to this region. And oftentimes we say, you know, the most important deliverable we're chasing is, of course, access to healthcare. That's what matters most. But it turns out there's actually a business case behind the work we're doing, and there's a return on investment when you look at investing in healthcare. So we commissioned David Campbell with Juvia Consultants to put together an economic impact report for us that actually is the first we're aware of to quantify the value of a single physician in a community in New Brunswick. And what we found was staggering. After a 10-year period, a single physician's office will contribute $2.8 million towards provincial GDP, $130,000 in municipal tax revenue. They will create the equivalent of 3.2 full-time equivalent jobs, induce $1.2 million in induced household spending, and over that time, they will see an estimated 8,000 patients. So the value of a single physician in a community like Ormonto is exceptional. And if we multiply those figures by 57, that gives a sense of the total value we are providing to New Brunswickers as a foundation. And then we look at the hundreds of students in our queue, it's going to grow even more. So beyond the numbers, we really see that there's a qualitative benefit to what we do as well. We support succession planning. Physicians today have the ability to come to us if they're approaching retirement and say, I'm a family doctor in Ormonto. Who do you have? You know, who's on your list who may be from this region or interested in returning to this region, who already has a signed, legally binding pledge to come to New Brunswick, and we can connect them. So we are really looking to leverage and optimize this pipeline. We connect our future doctors to communities. We maintain a strong network of students and alumni through regular events, newsletters, have strong social media presence. We ensure our recipients feel like they're part of something bigger, a community that is going to bring hope for healthcare in New Brunswick. And finally, we have that growth plan to support all students from New Brunswick. So the big picture, why do we bring doctors to communities? I really don't have to tell most of you this, we already know. But we know having access to a doctor brings families care and peace of mind. Health outcomes are hugely important to quality of life. We know that employers stand a better chance of growing their workforces when they can provide access to care for their employees. We've spoken to numerous economic development agencies, regional development corporations in the last year. Everyone has said that every conversation, whether it comes down to immigration, retention, business development, comes back to healthcare. It is the #1 issue on all New Brunswickers' mind today. We know that through increased access to care, we can ease the strain on our emergency rooms and clinics. And finally, overall, our province and our communities are better positioned for growth. So lots of ways that a community like Ormonto can become involved. It's as simple as championing this initiative. It's as simple as if you know medical students or aspiring medical students who are looking for financial aid, send them in our direction. You know, we not only provide that financial aid, but we get that commitment to care for New Brunswickers when they establish their careers here. Many municipalities do support scholarships through our organization. They do have specific or region-specific return to service commitments if that's something you are interested in exploring, or simply just reading our financial or our annual report, our literature, attending events. We are live streaming next week our annual scholarship gala, where we will be awarding that $1.1 million to 144 students. Our donors, community leaders, healthcare leaders are going to be in the room. If that's something you're interested in seeing and learning more about the work we do, but also the tangible outcomes, seeing those future positions on the screen, please tune in. That's on our Facebook and our YouTube pages. So lots of ways you can become involved. If you do want to learn more, David and I are accessible, and we've certainly left our information with you through those brochures. I do want to acknowledge our leadership, so our volunteer board of directors. We were actually pleased to welcome last week our first alumni member of the board of directors. So he's not on the slide yet, but Dr. Sam Palmer graduated from Dalhousie Medicine, New Brunswick in June. He volunteered right away, having benefited from scholarships all 4 years of his degree. To come in and help us and advise us from the student perspective and the young physician perspective going forward. So that's our presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions, but thank you for your time and for giving us an ear.
Question, council?
Yeah, just a quick question. Thank you for your presentation. I think it's very interesting. What is the average bursary that a municipality offers as an attraction incentive?
We generally see either typically $5,000 or $10,000 scholarships from municipalities. One thing I will note is that there is a discrepancy between the English language and French language programs that we see. The French language programs are subsidized by Quebec, so the tuition is generally around $6,000. The tuition to attend an English language program is roughly $26,000 per year.
Mhm.
So if we look at the scholarships we award to students attending either institution, the average is quite different. We try to award between $8,000 to $10,000 to students in the English language programs, or $5,000 to $6,000 for the French.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, council? Now, did you come to the Ormonto medical recruitment?
I did,
Yes.
that's right, Ms. Hall.
Because I noted all that, I thought, geez, that sounds a lot better than what we're trying to do, but I don't know, because we've got a incentive package that we want to give out to them, but if it's more than that, but you're talking what, 6,000 to 10,000, right?
Mhm. Yes, per year, but what we really see is an opportunity to collaborate. So we know that incentive packages, a lot of communities are using them and lots are seeing success. But can we pair those recruitment efforts with our pipeline of students who are committed here and provide leads that may be sure bet? That's one of the reasons we're having these conversations, is we do think there are ways that we can enhance both efforts.
Yeah, because I went down to Dalhousie University a couple of weekends ago for their little annual get together, and you give all the bling out to them, and you get a lot of broken promises, and I like this whole idea. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. I do too. My question is, what is the time between which a municipality pledges an offer to the time at which they find out there's been an accepted offer or pledge from a medical student who will then eventually come to the community?
Sure. So the timeline, the way it works is, if we wanted to set up a scholarship, typically the first thing we do is set up a memorandum of understanding with the prospective donor. We understand what kind of eligibility criteria may be looking for. For example, a return to service specific to the town of Ormonto would be something I'd imagine we would build in. Once we have that, we draft a scholarship agreement. That's reviewed by both parties. If all are in favor, that's signed. As soon as the funds are then received, they'll be invoiced after the agreement signed. Scholarship goes into effect. It's listed on our website. It's provided in the package that goes to our grants committee every year. Applications for scholarships open in March every year, and they're open until May. So all scholarships for the next year must be finalized by the end of May, so we can have a full list of available awards to give to the grants committee as part of their selection packages. The selection committee meets in July. They have their final list picked out typically by mid-July, and then we spend the rest of the month notifying students. All of our awards are conditional upon a signed return to service pledge. So in order to accept, the students have to sign that pledge. We receive it digitally, and then we disperse the funds to the universities. All funds are paid directly to the student accounts at the universities to ensure, that they're used responsibly and go directly towards tuition. That's important to us. But the one thing I would like to add is, the funds are important, the scholarship is important. But where we have seen the most success is when we really partner and liaise with the students, with the communities to foster a relationship that goes beyond funding. So for example, I often reference the town of the Ville de Dieppe, which has done a wonderful job. They set up an endowment 5 years ago, and the recipient of their endowment for 4 years graduated in June this year. His name is Sebastian LeBlanc. But what I loved about Mayor Lapierre's approach was he took that 4 years that his student was in school to build a relationship, to take him on tours, to exchange correspondence, to attend events together. The mayor wrote him a recommendation letter. So they used that time to build the relationship. And when Sebastian wrote me in June, when he graduated from Sherbrooke, he said, I feel so welcomed by the community. I feel so supported. His first choice for a residency program was at the Moncton Hospital in family medicine. And he said, I can't wait to open my practice in Dieppe in 2 years when I finish. So we know community integration is such a key component, that and workload. So we know the more physicians we bring in, the easier the workload will be, but also making sure they feel that they have roots in the communities where they're heading. So that's something we see in the town of Hampton. They have a physician, Dr. Scott Fenwick, the same thing. He feels so supported, so welcomed, and his patients are so grateful to have a young physician with 30 to 40 years ahead of him, that it's made a real difference, and he feels valued and trusted.
So if you had a candidate and say we gave you $6,000, now is that, so how many years do we pay that for this candidate?
So the typical ratio is for every year of funding, the student pledges 1 year of service. So ideally, if we fund a student through all 4 years of medical school, they come out with a 4-year pledge. So what we tend to see, and what the physicians on our board of directors tell me, is that within 4 years, a physician typically has a patient panel of a decent size. They have relationships with those patients. They've invested in a clinic, equipment, real estate. They have services provided. So they usually have fairly deep roots, and it's really tough to get them to move after that point. So we've seen, I can count on less than one hand, the number of physicians who have left New Brunswick after they have served those 4 years.
Right. So we could do that with, say we wanted to throw in, $24,000, we could do that for a portion.
You could, absolutely.
You have to.
Per year, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just not throwing that out, that we're gonna do that.
In theory, absolutely. And one of the things we screen applicants for is which regions of the province are you interested in working in? And that helps us match students with the regionally specific return to service agreements. And just about 50% of our applicants this year said they were willing to work anywhere in New Brunswick. So I think there's an openness on the students' parts to different regions, to learning about different regions, and considering maybe I will know where I'm going from my first year of medical school onward. That gives students a lot of focus. It removes a lot of ambiguity, almost as much as the relief that the financial incentive provides too. It's really meaningful to not feel like you're untethered when you're at that stage in your life.
So if we did that and you found the person that was willing, so what do? You connect with Horizon Health, say this is where they want to come, and
That's right. So, and that's actually one of the biggest changes I would say that's taking place in our organization in the last 2 years is we used to be primarily a scholarship program. We would award the scholarships, we track data, we always had great data, but it really ended there. What we have done in the last 2 years is optimize our pipeline to the point where we now have representatives from Vitality, the province of New Brunswick, the Department of Health, and Horizon sit on our alumni committee. They have access to our student data at quarterly meetings. We're also working on information sharing agreements with the regional health authorities that will allow us to, in real time, share where our alumni are, what residency programs they're in, where their return to service commitments are, et cetera. So we now have a seat at the table when it comes to workforce planning that we really haven't had before. So we know who to speak to, we know how to advocate for our students. And while we're not the employers, I would never say that we have control over who's employed, and there could certainly be unfortunate incidences where sometimes people do fall through the cracks. But what we have is far better than what we had 2 years ago.
Now, would Horizon Health dictate where they would have to work? Like
If it were
emergency or the hospital, or if they want a private practice?
The best, the most, strongest advantage that we have is the proactive nature of what we're doing. So because we can give the employers 4, 6, 8 years lead time, when we expect these positions to be employable, there's time to build in plans. So for example, the municipality of Tantramar signed on for a scholarship last year, but before they did, they actually consulted with Horizon Health and said, look, we want a family physician, that's who we're interested in funding. Can you guarantee that you can bring the student on board in, let's say, 4 or 6 years' time? And they actually did. So they said absolutely. So I think having a strong relationship with the employer is important, but we have a role to play, the donor has a role to play, the student and the employer. And what we're doing now is making those conversations happen. And that comes down, that's back to the community integration piece as well.
So do you advocate to Horizon on behalf of the town, or do we have to go in there and say blah, blah, blah?
What we do is we maintain essentially a huge spreadsheet of all of our residents once they're out of school into the residency programs, and our manager of student and alumni relations can tell me when and where these students are expected to finish. We audit that on a quarterly basis. And what we do is we forward that information, or we will, as soon as this information sharing agreement goes through, to the employers. And what we'll try to do from an advocacy point of view is ensure that we have quarterly touch points with the employers to say, here are the 16 names that we looked at, last quarter. Who's talked to who, what's happening, and keep the pressure on to hopefully fill the gap.
I know. Okay, any other questions or comments, council? Well, thanks for showing up tonight.
Thank you very much.
Is that
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, appreciate it.
All right, we'll move down to administration. We'll start with 4A, the 2025 budget survey results. Good night.
Thank you. Or your worship, I'll take that one. I guess easiest thing is to move over here. That way I.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So everybody got a copy of the full results in their package, just so they could review everything from all the questions, all the comments that were provided. But what I wanted to do for what we're looking to do with the information is just to present to you tonight, what I'll call a boiled down version of the collection of all those things, and you'll see this again next week, if you like it. And if you don't, we'll make some changes to it. But so essentially, what we got out of the results, going back to that preamble of service areas and the 5 major buckets that we always kind of speak to in terms of where does all the tax dollars go? They generally fit into these 5 categories. Obviously, you saw this in the preamble of the survey for those who took time to take the survey online. as a precursor, just to give the numbers and how the pies divide up, so. We'll go into that in more detail with the public next week, just so they have a better understanding, but I trust that everybody tonight understands what this slide represents, or at least I hope so. So essentially, you know, where we ended up in terms of the questions in the survey, you know, and how we developed it is, what have we heard? So we heard through some of the last, budget, I guess, presentations and processes that citizens wanted some more engagement in that budget process. So we listened, right? So we decided, okay, we launched a public survey, in addition to what we traditionally do in terms of engagement, with public consultation. So over that launch, which went from about September the 4th to September the 30th, just about a month, received 351 responses, which is pretty good uptake. Our Parks and Master Plan survey that some folks may have filled out too got a similar response rate. So for us, that's not a bad uptake. So what did that boil down to? About 90% of residents in town, including Ward 4 Lincoln. And they've been here for the majority of them more than 11 years. So that's pretty good uptake. That tells us that we got people invested. They've been here long enough to know how things work. So that's good. 70% of them were between 35 and 64, which isn't, atypical, because those are typically the folks who taxes concern the most, other than our seniors. And in that case, you all can saw the breakdown, and there was around 9% that were over 64. So that chose to fill out the survey. So what is the majority of the respondents felt the following services should be maintained? Because we asked them, you know, was there anything that, you know, we could potentially look at reducing, cut if we needed to save costs? Most of them felt no. The only one service they wanted increased was policing services, and so we'll see some of those comments reflected, and some of the comments reflected under what people call policing services were actually more bylaw enforcement, but that's fine. We understand. We'll be able to tackle that issue, we feel, in this next budget. So again, what did most people want to be engaged and informed, and how did they, just for our own purposes? And this was a pick any of it that apply, so that's why they don't add up to 100%. But clearly, as we all know, the majority of people are getting their information through social media. The next one was the website, and then beyond that, it's emails and or our Voyant system. So again, not a huge surprise in this day and age, but if somebody tackles you to put flyers or letters out, there's not a whole lot of bang for the buck there in this day and age when it comes to reaching the majority of our public. So again, 55% felt they received poor value for their dollar. So why? Well, when we boil down some of the comments as to why, the top 5 that we came to was, you know, a lack of curbside recycling service was on the minds of a lot of people. We think we can fix that over the next year. More policing, which, you know, range from just more visibility on the street to ATVs to, again, bylaw enforcement, which isn't exactly policing, but we can also help fix that as we move forward. There was a lot of importance on investments in recreation facilities. Naturally, we expect so. We hear that, hence why we were engaged in trying to do a very large project you know, build new. And the last one that popped up a lot was water and sewer bills. And so, while there were a lot of people who understood the messaging we put out last year in the form of how that works, we still have some work to do to continue to educate people as to, you know, water and sewer is a separate budget. It isn't paid through property tax. It has to be paid by fees, and that's how it's supported. So we'll continue to try to raise level of awareness in that regard and keep pushing forward on that. But some of the things we did see, which is good, is 71% of them agree that we need to invest in the new community recreation and wellness center. So even though it's a big ticket project, the overwhelming majority still feel that that's a good investment of tax dollars. 86% felt that enhanced level of services such as our snow gates, our specialized fire rescue equipment, public drop off for trees and grass are a good use of tax dollars. So while we might try to find efficiencies by potentially considering, you know, reducing those levels of service, what we're hearing is people really don't want that. So that's fair enough. We'll take that into account. In the top 5 priorities identified by the public for Oromocto, in that question of priorities, there were quite a few, but, you know, predominantly we could boil it down to 5 to keep it concerted. But first one obviously was public health. So what have we done here? And what can we be involved in? Because, you know, again, we have to continue to educate people that public health per se is not a responsibility of a municipal government. But what can we do to help support? You know, we feel like we're trying to track in that direction. We created a healthcare action committee to tackle some of the issues, and we're still creating that voice to the province on things like ER hours and extension and, you know, the safety of our local hospital and so on and so forth. So we will continue to do those things, you know, within the realm of our capacity and capability to do so. Affordable housing, again, is a big one. Not really surprised, because if you turn on the news anywhere, you're being told affordable housing rate from the federal government on down. How are we trying to support that? Well, we're working with Ignite on an economic development strategy. And one of those cores that this group's heard last month is that affordable piece, right? How do we, you know, create economic development for housing that can be more affordable for the general person. So we're working on that too. We'll let people know that. Infrastructure renewal, again, yeah, agree. You know, we know we need to get on that. We've been lagging a bit, but we're prepared this year to put a big push on. And so we're ready to invest millions into not only a new facility for recreation, culture purposes, but also, you know, the investments in our in-ground infrastructure as well. So investments in active living, hear a lot about that, which is fair too. So we'll continue to put into, you know, our budget things that our master plan will clearly identify, which is coming. But things in our parks, our playgrounds, our green spaces, because that plays into also our trails and rivers, which are important, and they connect people to other communities as well. The last one again is curbside at the top 5. We are currently trying to negotiate with the service provider to provide that curbside service to all our residents in Oromocto. I will say this is one thing that the folks in the Lincoln ward already have. but everyone else does not yet. So we are working on hopefully having something in place by the end of 2025. And so that's about as good as a dot I can put on it for now, but as we move into the first of the year, my hope is that date will become clear.
We also have better cell service in Ormond than West apparently.
Apparently, everyone does. It is bad.
Yeah, that's one that's on the list. It didn't hit the top 5, but certainly something that we can also try to help support. Cell towers are the realm of the federal government, and it's through the CTRC. But, you know, can we write to them and request that one of the conglomerates do a better job at increasing cell service? We can do that. I will tell you, since I've been here 13 years, I have negotiated agreements with Rogers, with some folks, other cell service providers, and anytime they needed a cell tower, I did not turn them away. But largely it's relying on the service provider to want to invest in infrastructure, and we will make it happen. But that being said, yeah, it's one of those comments that did pop up. So top recurring comments, in terms of that, wellness, that was a recurring comment in different forms. So encouraging outdoor activities, which can lead back to investments in parks and trails and things like that. Recycling, you have to do more and get a curbside service, got it. Tracking on it, more police and related bylaw enforcement. Understand, we will be looking at some increased bylaw enforcement because that's something we can control. 2 new ice surfaces, that was on the list. Not sure it's a fiscal reality, but hey, this is what people are telling us. The last one was lower the current tax rate, so fair enough. That was on there multiple times. I just like to bring to attention that the first 4 bullets and the last bullet do not go together, right? But this is not uncommon, and I understand that from the public. You know, they want new stuff, they just don't want to pay for it. I get it. I'm not like that too. If I could walk into the store and walk out without paying for it and it actually not being illegal, I'd like to do that. But, you know, it's a fair enough. We want to make sure we reflect all the comments and not sugarcoat anything. So that was one of the top 5. And really, at the heart of it is, again, that we would build this into our presentation for the larger presentation on next week for our public presentation. So that's it in a nutshell. Obviously, if there's questions, comments, concerns, then we'll make sure we take them and see if we can make it into the presentation if there's something there that anyone feels is missing.
Comments, Deputy Mayor Maloney?
Thank you, Worship. I really appreciate the fact that we have done the survey. I think it does provide additional voice. Of course, we are 9 voices around this table, but to have 351 voices is even better. And we have common themes that have emerged. Some of those common themes were not at all of a surprise. I knew the recycling one would come up. I knew the need for additional infrastructure would come up. There were some others that were mentioned by 1 or 2. Again, very valid comments, but I think when looking at themes is what we're really looking at. When you were identifying the top 5 priorities, did you keep like a frequency distribution of like how many people actually said that? Because, I mean, when you were looking at your priorities and I looked through them, I was thinking, okay, how often was that really said though?
Yeah.
And so I'm almost wanting to go back now and do the tally myself because I'm just curious, so like, when those top 5 priorities. Like, did you actually say, okay, oh, recycling was answered, mentioned, second person, third person, fourth person, and that became your top priority because of that? Or how did you come about those 5 top priorities?
Yeah, so I'll say on that list, it isn't that those priorities are ranked from 1 to 5, but they were just generally the 5 issues that cropped up the most amongst the whole survey, right? So it wasn't like, so if the first bullet said, curbside, it wasn't that one was necessarily the most talked about, but one of those 5 that came up more often. So when I went through it, I read through some that were very succinct. And I read through some that it was like, okay, they started off with curbside and then they went to policing and then they went, and so I tried to make sure I pecked off, those as I went along. The other piece was there was a particular question about priorities where they actually gave percentages. And so that one, I just went down through the top 5 and the percentage that the program organized.
Thank you.
Councilor Von Richter?
Thank you, worship. Two things that struck out to me was the number of times people mentioned email. I mean, I think we probably should have something prepared just to say, first of all, we don't provide email services. It's not our responsibility. But, that we have worked with providers and we certainly pass on the concerns to the providers. But the other one that struck me, and it's kind of, I don't mean to make light of it, but the issue of the number of pickup trucks that are going home to people's driveways seem to be, and I'd heard before I ran for council, I mean,
Yeah.
and I jokingly said, well, where's my truck and all that thing, but I mean, we may wanna have some numbers to say, first of all, we only have this many trucks, we don't have 150, or we might say, here's how we are in comparison to other towns of this size, or compared to Fredericton, or whatever, just some ammunition. And you're always gonna get complaints about things like that, because people see one truck and then multiplies 50,000 times, and you can't help but when you see something with a logo on it, parked somewhere. Oh, you know what that's doing there, like, somebody sees a town truck in Fredericton, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Lots of valid reasons for it to go to Fredericton, lots of them, but people say, oh yeah, another arm up their truck up Phil Drive.
Yeah.
Guys are getting their groceries at Costco today, or whatever, I mean, so I think we had some information just.
Yeah.
To, at your elbow type thing, in case you need to use it, or.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, to your point, one of the things I am working with the town engineer on is a more robust fleet management plans. By next year, all our equipment will be equipped with GPS units, so we know where our equipment is. In terms of some of the comments, it's again, educating people. Yes, we do by policy allow certain people when they're on take a vehicle or to town because they're on call. And I know you don't see that when you see them. For sure. So those are, I did notice that too. And for this purpose, we can speak to it absolutely. For the purpose of our budget public study presentation. I didn't feel it was gonna be relevant to the subject, but no doubt, you all have all of the comments, good, bad, indifferent. And some of us have heard them before, and so we'll attempt to continue to either correct a behavior that should not be, or provide the data that makes the rationale sound.
Any other questions or comments, council? No?
So I'm assuming, your worship, that those few slides are good to go. We'll add them for the purposes of, educating the public through our public consultation. That's good.
Councilor Kirkbride?
Thank you, Worship. I agree with you, CAO, and I agree. I think the more transparency we can give, the better off we're gonna be. I'm expecting a little bit of a crowd perhaps next Tuesday, maybe more so than normal, especially with some new things on the horizon. And, so I think the more information that we can provide to our residents, the better off we will be, and the more support that we will have. When we have to do, and when we have to answer questions about how the town does spend the taxpayers' money.
And we can straighten out some of the assumptions.
Yep,
And they are there,
That's it.
yeah, there are some.
oh, for sure, yeah. We're all well aware of those assumptions and we either need to defeat them with rationale or correct the behavior.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, CPO. Move down to 4B, the town logo redesign. Now, Ben, are you doing anything on that one, or you're just listening?
I'm just listening.
Oh, okay.
Talking about.
Okay, so, in your packages this evening, you have a copy of a request for decision. That request for decision was based on some of the feedback that we had received when Ginger Agency had come in and presented the various logo design options. When council looked at those, design options, there was three, if you recall. The first, concept design, you'll call this one here, it had the stylized M here, and it was unanimous that it would be eliminated. But with concept two, the original version, the concept behind this is nature active. It highlights the natural beauty and active living within the town of Oromocto. So as a reminder, this was the design that was looked at and presented by Ginger. And there were some requests for some changes or modifications to that. Notably was that we would look at the new design in, what we heard was a lot of people reflect that these are the Oromocto colors, the blue and gold. So you can see here how they utilized that. This is the depiction. You can see the comparison between the two. And here's how they would see it being used in different graphics. With the blue and gold being prominent. So that was concept two. Concept three, that version was titled Proud Pulse, and it was really talking about the elements of the town's energy and how the town is progressively moving forward in that mindset. So with that particular one, there was a request that we change the font style. This is what it was originally. And this is what the revised version is. As you can see, this is capital letters and the font style has changed. There's a comparison there. And then you can see how the font style has changed here as well, with the tagline of More Than Rivers Connect Us. And again, how it can be utilized. So with that, your worship, I'm just asking for council's thoughts, opinions, changes, direction on how you'd like to proceed with this logo rebranding, so that we may move forward with our communication strategy.
Questions or comments, council?
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, worship. That could be paid Ginger for this.
I'd have to go back and look. I know the total budgeted amount is about $40,000.
But that also includes the communication. plan.
Oh, yes, yes.
And do we have a cost for total changeover? So we decided to change all our logos, business cards, letterheads, vehicles, all that stuff. Do we have a rough cost for that?
Your worship, we haven't costed that yet. I know that we were looking at incremental, changes. Some things can be done at no cost, but there will be some printing costs.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't done a total analysis if we were to change all the road signs, all the markings on vehicles or fleet or equipment and all that, because.
Only reason I asked, is I was going through this with my former wife, and on a couple of occasions, and it always ends up happening quicker than you wanted to, thought it would, or you can't delay some stuff, you have to do some stuff right away. And it usually costs you more than you thought. But the other thing, based on the budget comments, everybody wants more services or the same service and less taxes. So is this, I know we talked about it, we want to do it, but without knowing the full cost, is this the right time to be changing the town models and logo? That's the reason I'm looking for the bigger cost. Because that's gonna be a question when we do it. Absolutely.
And Ben might have a comment on it.
I just want to provide some context, that Ginger provided to me after their presentation. And they actually mentioned, when they presented council afterwards, that they were impressed on how early Ormucto got on the rebrand. Because of all the amalgamation in the province, you know, and we're more than just the town of Ormucto now, we include Lincoln. So many municipalities are now starting this project that the town started months ago, because the necessity for us was to change, right? We're Lincoln, so this project, you know, undertook encompassing them. Grown as well. So their comment leaving here was, we're really impressed with the town of Ormucto getting on this as early as they did, because we're now just starting this process with many other municipalities. So I just wanted to provide that and some context to why we did this initially. And like we discovered through the process, there's a lot of different logos being used. Even on signs, on vehicles, you know, driving around town. And the big need for this was a communications plan to standardize this, right? And this is, the logo's a small piece of the puzzle of what we pay them.
No, I understand. I've been through a couple of these over the years, and
It's really step one.
it's always a tough subject because most people say, you know, you spent money on what?
Your worship, there was some funding that was available through the local governance reform. And we haven't applied for that as yet, but it's those types of things that it's looking at to offset what the cost may be.
Right, you know, and what I would say from my perspective is we can ramp this up or dial it down as much as it is the will of this council, right? And so even if we chose a brand that we prefer, i.e. logo, we can develop that slowly, because to Ben's point, we already have multiple sort of logos out there, so that's not gonna be earth shattering to anyone if there's another one. But then over the period of 5 years, you know, or so, as if we focus our comms plan to a point where when we order something new, when we do something new, we use the new logo over time, we would start to have more uniformity instead of saying, okay, we're gonna change everything in 6 months, in which case you're right, the costs on that would be quite frankly prohibitive to us right now. So, you know, that rollout can certainly be digested with, you know, direction to staff. And so tonight, it's just a matter of deciding, is there one of these here that you like? And then we can discuss a rollout and what that might look like, you know, for you. Or do you hate all of these and not want to move forward at all? I mean, that's another option, right? So that's really hopefully what we might be able to get tonight.
Councilor Murdoch?
Yes, so to take me back, so the reasoning we're doing this is, as Ben said, it's a little bit of inconsistency of what we have going. So all these other logos we have, now I know a few years ago, we created one for Works and one for WAC and one, is that what you mean by the different logos? That there's different ones but that was developed for each department. Is it, I guess, I see a lot of municipalities maybe changing the logos because if something has changed. I know we've adopted Lincoln, but I don't see where our signs that we have can't just go where they gotta go. Like I don't, the growth of Lincoln, I don't see what it does to making a new sign. I totally get the have them sort of all come together and look the same. But there was a lot of time and money put into those different department logos being created at that time too. So I guess I'm just wondering why, you know, if we created them for that, why are we now thinking we don't want to have that? Like what is the issue?
So I would say from my perspective, it isn't that there's a clear issue, it's just that it's like any organization over time, they reset, they rebrand. You know, certainly not everyone identifies with the model town, especially Lincoln, they weren't even remotely part of that. So there's some things like that over time that we can try to change and adapt to. It's, some people would suggest that some of these are a more modernistic approach, you know, on fonts, on use of symbols that just quite frankly wasn't around when we did the first reiteration. Is there an issue? I would not say there's quote an issue in that respect, other than that, you know, at some point we want to grow as well into perhaps a modernized, more, you know, more consistent approach on brand. And that's when we discuss those branded house or house of brands, and we try to get that conformity over time. And again, to my point about driving it fast or driving it slow, that can all be explored with staff from that perspective. If there's one of those particular logos that the group has a consensus on.
Okay. I hear all of those things when I see this. I see we want to build a new facility, which I say is coming, no matter what. It would look awfully nice to have a modern looking logo, sign, branding on something like that. Vehicles driving around, one logo is nice. You know, when you, some towns use different color trucks for different departments, or the t-shirts can still have the department logo. But when you see that truck, it is definitely Ormonton. So like, what was out of the logo to get that word? I see a lot of value in this, more so though, in how we're branding ourselves to those people not in Ormonton. So when I look at this one in particular is on the screen right now. This to me looks new, it looks fresh, it looks kind of energized. So if we're looking to attract people to come here, I look at these colors, I look at even some of the logos. Is it my favorite logo? No, but I could see that on the front of the building, or I can see that on the walls of the new rec and culture facility. Oromocto written out the way it is, and sure, it'll work. It says Oromocto and it'll work, but I agree, things update, things change, and if we're marketing ourselves and trying to be competitive with Oromocto or with New Maryland and Fredericton and all the other areas and trying to attract maybe business or conferences to come to our new facility or things like that, we need to look fresh and different. We're just gonna get lost, I'll say, for lack of better terms. If we don't update, I think, doesn't have to happen this year, no, maybe this is there and it kind of sits on a shelf, and as we approach time to build some of these new facilities, it gets introduced on a bigger scale. But I do think there is some value, and I understand the other aspect of it too, is if it's not broke, do we need to fix it? It's not broke, but again, if we're trying to move forward and we're trying to attract more people, we're trying to attract developers, we're trying to attract doctors, do we look fresh and new? Do we look like we're like revitalized and trying to move forward, or are we happy sitting with what we always had? I don't know. I'm not somebody that's trying to come and open a business here, so I can't speak to that, but I do see some value in it. Again, the pace at which I don't know, but I do appreciate some of the new fresh look, I guess. That's wonderful.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I was the guy that mentioned all caps, and when I see the logo, are we the town of Romucto?
Yeah.
I just wonder if it should all be the same size. Might look better, because that looks great, I like the old way it is, but just the town of Romucto, when I see it that way,
With that.
you
O
know,
like that.
you know the O is part of the name. I mean, in the one on the left, you see both, see the Romucto and Romucto, that's obvious. But the middle one and the one on the right should be the same size.
Proportions.
Go back and see the other logo as
Well,
well.
what's the other one?
The other one's smaller,
Sunrise.
the other one's are all okay, okay.
It was just lowercase.
Yeah.
Oh, you can get it.
That's the other design that we're looking at, concept two versus concept three. And this is
Now I
what,
can't stop looking at it.
But now I just see Romucto.
Yeah, now I'll probably see.
Well, maybe no one else sees it though, I don't know.
Well, I can see it now, because you pointed it out.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I'm the guy that likes the all caps, but maybe they should all be the same size. And again, you're gonna find this funny, because guys just came in from Lincoln, but I go back to my original statement about visions and values and mothers, and apple pie last night. I think we spent the same amount of money re-energizing the old one. The old one works, I think, but, I know I'm alone with that. I know I'm alone with that. I'm gonna read it on.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Richard. I'm of a couple of mindsets on this one. And I understand the issue of identity. I understand the issue of we are now a different community than we were before. I 100% get that. I do think that there is an element of loss in the sense that we are a very unique town in the country, in the fact that we were settled based on a model, a military model. And I say this as a non-military person, so, the one thing that I do know that having the name of model town, people equate the word model with perfection or a utopian town where everything is perfect and you're the model for the country. But that's really not, that really shows you have no understanding of what the model town is. And I would like to say that I have a complete understanding of what that means, but I don't. But I simply know that it's been explained to me that we were the model town because we were based on, when the town was founded, it was based on a military model with different quadrants within the town and so on. Hence the reason why we have so many schools within a very small spacing. So I do think that there is a loss, and I do think that there will be people within the town who would be quite disappointed with the fact that we've abandoned that very long history of, or was it 1950 something? And so it is, I think, a significant decision to deviate away from that. Doesn't mean that difficult decisions aren't decisions that need to be made. I'm simply saying that I don't think it's one to be made lightly, simply because we like colors or font or whatever. I think it's something for which we really need to look at what is the brand identity and say, will more people connect with that than they would the current? Or would that attract new people to the town than it currently does? Or I guess what I'm looking at is the appealing nature is, would this appeal to more people than what would our current? For me, I'm just not 100% sold, and I don't know if I'm prepared to make a decision on this right now.
I can tell you, and Ben's here as well, he was in on every one of the focus groups that we have received. And resoundingly, they had come back and said they wanted change. Now, that was the focus groups, the sampling across the community. They didn't understand most of them did not understand the Canada's model town. They have not seen any of this. But I just share that with you as a reminder.
No, I appreciate that. And just as a rebuttal to that, Your Worship. Thank you. And I guess my response to that, and I do remember when they were here making the presentation, I was a little bit struck with the sample size of the focus groups. I wonder, and this again, it comes back to, is it a full out change or is it education? And I'm just looking, I'm trying to balance the two things in my mind, and I'm not saying that I have the right answer. It's just the two competing philosophies I have in my mind. I also know that you can't keep the same thing forever. So I think there's a lot of good work here. I'm just not sold yet on what the answer is.
I'm in the same thing.
Councilor Kirkbride?
I think with the amalgamation, I don't see how we can call it Ormucto the model town anymore. That's just how I feel at this point, just because when the model town was developed, Lincoln was not part of it.
Mhm.
Ward 4, there was no Ward 4.
And now he is.
Now it's a large land area of our community. So that's the one thing that I'm kind of, where I'm kind of, and I mean, I love. Cause I know I can explain it a little bit too as well, what the model town represents and how it was built and all that sort of thing. But that since the amalgamation, we're not based on that model
No,
anymore.
we're not, no, that's right.
We are not. So it's, but I also don't know if this is the right time to be spending funds either.
But to go back to John's idea of doing it very slow.
Very, very slowly, like maybe unveiling
solution
it
to that.
on our new cultural recreational facility, and that's the first time the symbol is seen.
Or slowly work it into it and then eventually do a grand thing.
Or something along those lines.
Cause I agree that spending the monies on it for a big change is not the right time.
I agree with you 100%, Councilor, on that.
That's a good point about the model town comment. That is a really good point.
Yeah, and if I could add to what Councillor Kirkbride's saying to that is that where we're sitting right now is also not part of the, right?
That's true.
So I know a lot about the model plan, because, you know, my background being what it is, but, you know, the model town, when the town developed to what we call this side of the highway, was no longer the
It
model,
was not a model.
right? And we've been on this side of the highway since 1972-ish, I don't know, it's been a while. So again, while I can certainly appreciate to where that comes from, because I quite frankly have an affinity to that as well, I understand it well. But I also believe that we won't lose it either, because one of the things that we need to do through our own communication is continue to educate on the history. So we'll never lose that moniker in my mind, because we need to continue to keep it alive through the history and all those things that go along with it. But you know, I understand both sides completely, from that aspect.
Deputy Mayor, you had another?
Well, no, I guess I was just going to say that just based on your last comment, it kind of reinforces the idea that we have experienced different boundary reiterations since its inception, and they kept the same model. But again, I'm not tied to whatever. I'm just trying to balance in my mind, particularly in light of what people are looking for in terms they're not seeing deliverables for their tax dollars, and whether or not this is a compelling or urgent issue at this point in which we need to invest more dollars in budgets to come for this versus, and I know that everything is a balance. You have to spread out your tax dollars accordingly in different areas, but I just don't know if there are further opportunities for public consultation beyond the focus groups, I guess is all I'm saying. So if we're committing to doing community surveys like we just did each year, why could that not be a question in the next survey we did next year, in terms of the town of Ormucto is seeking to look at rebranding. Now that we have incorporated Lincoln and have become a greater community. Here are some options for which we've considered. And of course, the model town and state is one, and then you present the other ones presented. Good idea, not a good idea, I don't know. I'm throwing that out there simply trying to balance those things in my mind of looking forward, trying to balance it all out, and I just don't know if it's, I just don't know if it's the timing there and if we have enough public input on what I would consider to be a fairly large decision and deviating away from what our identity was, or it is.
But just to play devil's advocate on that, it's also a big change in our community. We have gone through some major changes, and like most things, and has been referred to, a lot of them, the provinces are starting to be aware that this change has happened in their community, and now they're getting on board to do something like this because it's coming. And one way or the other, I'd like to see Sierra's comment that how we do it and how speed and how we do it is definitely, going to be a lot different than a grand book food law, but to do a little bit at a time and get to the point where we have a big structure coming around the corner and lead it up to it, may not be it might be a nice, less impact way of doing something that really will have to be done at some point. And we don't want to get to the point where we're 2 or 3 years down the road and we got a new building. We're certainly not gonna spend money to put this logo on the building if we're thinking we might be changing it. So, you know what I mean? Like, right now, we can change a couple stickers on a truck, but we got a new building on the corner. We're gonna wanna make sure that if we're changing anything, we want that done before that. So having it all, or the other way, what Council said, have the building be the grand thing and then let things come afterwards would be just as good. But if we are making all these changes, or we have had all these changes, maybe what we should be thinking is that's a natural progression, and maybe that's where we should be leaning. However, speed and dollars we wanna do it. Because I know I'm not going to, if we're getting away from this at some point, I'm not gonna wanna put that on the new building.
Or the
Whatever.
fire.
Or the,
All the new
at some
infrastructure,
point,
new water.
I'd rather maybe think about it and come somewhere and do a little bit or work into it than to have, a major thing we have to do because we get a new structure. Cause we're gonna spend enough on the structure. You certainly, so I guess I sort of, confusing the issue a little bit, but I'm kind of thinking maybe that's the whole point of this, and maybe that's what Ben would refer to, that other places are coming to that
Yeah.
conclusion.
And again, this is part of a bigger process and plan for staff to utilize, right?
Right.
Because when we do buy that new pickup truck, or that new loader, that it has a consistent
It's,
logo on it.
yeah.
From, that recreation, someone knows it's town of Fort Musco. Doesn't matter if it's public works or planning and compliance. It has a similar logo and our letterhead.
that's all that's
And
necessary.
that way staff has a policy to go off and say, when we send an email, our signature block looks the same whether we work here or down the road. And that's the bigger part of it.
Yeah, I can't remember why we had that division, why we created it, just because it was nice to kind of have a logo per program, I guess. Remember the rec, I remember when the rec came out and they were nice, but I guess it was some ownership on it. But maybe at some point now, we're getting to the point where we're thinking, do we need that ownership? Can we not be consistent in this?
Councilor Carr?
Thank you, Richard. I was just waiting to make a comment, like, this is one part. So this is one part, we're all really focused on what the phrase is, the logo is, but this is also gonna play into our tourism strategy and yes, the logos on the trucks, but it's how do we sell time in our rink or our cultural space when it's not being used for hockey? Is this marketable or is that marketable? What, if we're looking at it from, if we go to the person who we hire to market us, if we go to the regional brand or regional tourism, what would they say? Is this easier? Is that easier? That is the whole thing. So thinking about, to be honest, I'm not sold on either of the phrases. But I can see both logos. I was talking to the counselor beside me here. The light blue variety, I'll say option 2. I can imagine walking into the front of our new facility, probably a large, those colors, they're fresh, they're bright, they're invigorating, I can see that, wow. You walk into a big entrance to a
This
ring,
one?
yes, the blue on the right, that's energy. Like if I
And
walk in,
that's
if
why
I
they
would walk into a wellness or a recreation or a community facility, that blue is like, whoo, all right. That's, and I can see that on marketing,
And that's why
very
we
easy.
pick
If I look at the first logo, I look at that, if we're marketing our trail systems, our water trails, our walking trails, our disc golf, our golf course. I feel like that easily slides into a video. I don't know that I love either phrase. Maybe the phrase is what we need to pick at, I don't know, but I'm thinking kind of what Ben's saying, this is one super small piece of this. This is just a logo. How is it gonna work into the branding for the marketing company we hire? How is it going to look rolling down the street with the trucks and in the parades and on the pamphlets? That's where, and I, to be honest, I wasn't even thinking about the Lincoln joining Ormucto Park through all this. It's funny, I hear it, I'm like, thanks, that sounds really nice, but I'm thinking just in the whole group. It's something, it's new and we're gonna have to be competitive. And if I look at the old logo, I don't think there's anything wrong with your old logo. To be honest, like if we're talking about the focus groups, a lot of the focus group, were younger individuals, there was a mixture. I bet you most of the focus groups couldn't read the cursive and model on that. I'll be honest with you, I bet you 50% of our focus group could not read the word model if it was in cursive. We have to think about that. If we're attracting 20-something families, there's a lot of 20-somethings that can't read cursive. So is that the best logo? But that's for those branding organizations to help us decide. And that's their job, right? So we do have input because we live here, but we also have to put some trust in them and what is going to move us forward too. Maybe that's not the phrase, but maybe a new logo or the way the logo is for that, I don't know. But I do appreciate it and I have nothing solidly against Model Town. I don't think I wasn't even thinking in terms of Lincoln joining, but I mean, even Ormucto West doesn't fit in that Model Town original plan, really, the majority of it. Like you said, this building doesn't. We were discussing the 4 schools in the quadrants. They're gonna get knocked down and large schools are gonna replace them. And they're gonna put them wherever they decide to put them for the most part, where the land's available, which has some direction by us, but it's not gonna fit what was the model.
Yeah.
It's gonna fit over 3 different models. So is that really where we're trying to keep that going? I think it will survive in many residents' minds, those people that were posted here or grew up here. That will still be there. That cohort eventually will pass on and the new group will be coming through. We have to move forward at some point, but yeah, that's my input, I guess. I'm not, all down to it, I'm not sold on the phrase. I'll have both logos, I just don't know which one. I don't know that I can pick one over the other tonight, but
Yeah,
the phrases, I'm not really sold on either of them, to be honest.
more than Rivers Connect. Attribute.
Oh, that's a question.
It's just a question of staff. We don't make a decision tonight, how far can we punt this down the road without having to start all over again? Also, you're looking for a decision tonight to help draft the strategy and the next piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, your worship, it's, is the sky gonna fall if we don't get a decision tonight? No, but I do know staff's eager to get engaged in the next phase of that communication plan. So, even if it was a matter of, okay, what more direction do you need for us to bring this back one last time? Third's the charm, whether it be next month or whatnot, so we can really try to give staff direction in 2025 as to what you would like them to do from a communication standpoint. So does it
So
mean?
it's fair to say we should be doing it no matter what. Is that the kind of, the final thing is it probably has to be done.
In my professional
off the
opinion,
band.
in my professional opinion, it needs to be done.
Yeah, okay,
We
so
need-
that's-
We need to move forward at some point. I do believe that staff's prepared to pace it up and down to your liking.
Right.
Staff
But it
is
has to be
aware that we can't invest $32 million in new signage, and so we can do that. This is really about, is is there anything there that will resonate enough with the majority of the council in order to move us forward into the next phase of that communication plan? And if there's not tonight, then just please let us know what you need for, say, next month, so that we can get some more concrete way forward.
I was sold on the blue, the second one, as far as coloring. But I like the one that's on the screen that said, you believe that, yeah.
This one?
That, yeah, I was sold on that one because it was sort of related to what we were with our bid. And I think that's what, when I look at this, the first one, and the one with, I like the, and we were just saying, we don't really particularly like the green at the bottom of the third tab. But I like that sound, I like the idea, like when you show a picture of it, just go up the next slide up, Cindy. The next one of that, I could see that on our trucks, I could see that in a lot of places. It's clean, it's simple, it's, the sun and the water, it all has,
Yeah, we looked at this too and said, perhaps this is the representation of the 4 wards.
That's right, yeah, actually, that'd be even a nice one. Yeah, and I just think that despite the fact that I love the color of the other one, I think, well, and then of course, now that Gary brought up that, or well, I can't stop looking at it, just with starting with the letter R. So, but I'm with Jeff, I don't know if I like the green of it, maybe the green on that one.
That's just a mock-up design.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
that's
may be something we can play with our,
Yeah.
and I'm with our fellow council, the professionals do this for a living, and they brought font and colors. Because they know what's around the corner, we only know what we like, right? And I'm a big believer when they come up with things, even if I don't understand why. Now, oddly enough, the very top one there, Cindy, at the top, you can see a little bit, no, keep going down.
Mostly
Well, right
yellow.
there with the yellow.
Majority.
But that's absolutely horrible. Oh, so many ways.
There's a lot of yellow.
I don't know why, I guess because it's a close-up version of, I don't like that. But I mean, I know what we can nitpick the little ways of how, which one we like. So if I had to pick one, I think I'd pick this one. The one with the yellow and the,
Certainly this one's easily replicated.
I like that. That to me is very nice and clean. Now, you can play with the font and do all that kind of fun stuff at that. And I actually like more than Rivers Connect Us. I like that tag only because it just seems very plain and simple and to the point, but.
Just a,
Councilor Carr?
thank you, worship, sorry. Just a quick, I don't know if anybody has the answer here now, but like, what is the average of how often a town or municipality updates their phrase? Like, I doubt Fredericton's had the same phrase for 70 years.
Does anyone even?
I suspect St. John has, I guarantee St. John has not had the same phrase for 7. I suspect we've hung on to a phrase for a very long time, and that's not necessarily bad. That's not necessarily bad.
I don't even know how.
But I don't know that the city of Fredericton, St. John often on their tourism at least has a new phrase every few years.
They get a lot of this, there's something.
I don't know.
A lot of municipalities, I
know
don't
the
believe,
phrase.
hang on to one for 70 years, right? Like,
Yeah,
Because
and I don't
communities
know how long
change.
we use it. Like, to be fair,
it's the locals that are.
it's like more than Rivers Connect Us. Where is that all gonna go?
It's on the website.
Yeah.
That's all right, it's
Yeah.
not gonna be all.
Like, it's just another depth of our town, it's just another way, it's like a mission statement to an organization, it's just something to say we do this and, it's really gonna come down to that, or,
Yeah.
those things.
Those, to Ben's point, it's a website, it could be a highway sign, something that's like, oh.
Tourism for the year,
Yeah,
That kind of thing, but
it's just another depth.
I'm certainly not gonna include it in
So
all.
you don't have all
my
the same-
letterhead.
You're not gonna
No.
sign off?
You gotta
More
sign
than it's gonna-
on bottom of all your emails. No, but it is a tag, that's what a tag is for, it's just sort of a thing that you throw in every now and then, to sort of put some depth into your town. And so you don't have literally that on everything, that's really what it's about.
Okay, so, we're gonna give you a month, is that what we're gonna do?
But he wants to know what we want from
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I didn't know very clear.
I said I like this one and maybe play around with the non-green and maybe font, I'm fine with that. But I do want to, like everyone says, move slowly or potentially make a plan to move towards something just for the cost at this time where we're, you know, arguing with people, but where the money's gonna spend. That they do not see the value in this as much as you guys will. Although, I shouldn't say that, what did the focus group say about the value in this? Cause that was the whole point of it.
I don't know if we specifically talked about value, but we did talk about the need, or, you know, the need for consistency and the need for rebranding and that.
And they were all consistent on that?
Fairly, I mean, your Ross Iversons of the world, you know, they're passionate and,
Right,
you know, they don't want to see all towns going anywhere, just like John said, or representing.
Right,
It's not
right.
going anywhere. But yeah, I don't think we talked specifically about value,
okay.
perception.
So, yeah, your worship, just in terms of trying to make sure we get that direction, it would just be a matter of. We can certainly come up to it, we just, you know, for example, throwing an idea, we could put a quick survey that showed our existing, town, old model town, and then these two, and say, please tell us which one you like the most, run it for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
We can bring that data back to you, if that matters.
Love it. Yeah.
And then from there, could we then possibly next month,
Yeah.
make a decision?
And in the interim, if council would like, we can present a proposed budget and timeline on some of these things.
Yeah, cause that's gonna be what we're
I
gonna be
mean,
asked.
right now, I can tell you the biggest expense that we're going to incur is any signage.
Mhm.
And we've not budgeted coming forward for this year at all for the signage. The other things are minimal. I know right now our recreation department has put ordering on hold until we determine what we're doing in terms of the brand identity. I know that some of our giveaways that we have using the old Candace Model Town, we also have put those on hold. We have budgeted monies this year already. So we just wanted to replace it with the new logo if council decides.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah, and just to that point, so for council, just as an understanding, so we don't, whatever logo we move forward with here shortly, whether it's hopefully next month, we're not gonna make a major capital commitment in our budget. What we will do is try to develop some guidelines whereby if we buy a new vehicle or something, then it'll be branded with a new logo perhaps. But that's already built into our budgets now.
That's right.
It's just like a logo.
Right. So we can pretty much assure you that even if we move forward, we're not going to increase our spending or our budget for this exact purpose. We're just gonna, that would be that roll into when we buy more coffee cups, we'll put this logo.
100%.
Well, we were gonna do that anyway, so.
That's right.
There's
It's not a
no
new cost.
new costs, yes.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Richard. I am 100% comfortable with that approach. I really appreciate that. I mean, we all know that we are simply one voice doing our best to represent the community and the town moving forward. But the more voices that we can inject into that process, I think is better. And when the data comes back, we can consider it, knowing that we're gonna be making a decision next month.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty. On that note, I'll call for a mover for Council Kirkbride, seconded, Council Tar, questions, on favor, contrary, motion carried.
Oh, you're waiting.